You could not live with your own failure.
Is there fake footage throughout the trailers this time?
Maybe it's all fake.
Yeah.
Maybe there's not a real frame in that whole trailer.
Anthony and I, through our entire experience at Marvel, I've always tried to make very disruptive choices with each film. At the end of Winter Soldier, good guys are the bad guys. We flip everything on its head. Civil War, we divorced the Avengers. In Infinity War, we knew we wanted to make a strong narrative choice. There's an adage where you write yourself into a corner and you try to figure out how to get out, and that usually creates really dramatic moments for the audience. There's no bigger way to write ourselves into a corner than killing half the characters.
We actually never thought of it as a cliffhanger in our own brains. For us, we were telling a complete story. This was Thanos' movie. He was the lead of the film, and we gave him a complete arc and he won a proper ending.
I mean, the visualization was purely just, we thought about the elemental aspect of, your body and what happens to it, and accelerating the decomposing process in a way, right?
We very thoroughly explore a lot of different ideas before we lock into what's exciting us most. So at some point, I'm sure there are many variations, but once the story starts to take shape, it really forms in a muscular way around a single idea, and then we spend months working on that.
As far as who went to dust, everything's always built upon story. And we'll just say that there's a reason that the original 6 Avengers are left.
Are you going to clue us in to any?
Not in one bit. Spider-Man was my favorite character growing up, and it was this notion of this child who had been burdened with this incredible responsibility, and through very tragic circumstances by the death of his uncle. And then, Tony Stark and Peter Parker developed a father-son relationship over the course of 2 films. So we felt like that would be hard to watch, and it was hard to watch on set, and it was hard to watch for the audience, I think.
Civil War is where it started to come into our brains because, as we were executing that movie, we wanted to kind of break up the Avengers and shatter that relationship at the heart of it between Steve Rogers and Tony Stark. They're the heart and soul of the Avengers, So for the 2 of them to have a falling out and have an irreconcilable problem was really, devastating to the team as a whole. And sort of as we were executing it and we realized how well we were sort of achieving that on an emotional level with the characters, that's when I think our brains started to open up to, oh my God, they're so vulnerable now. Now, like what happens when Thanos comes, and that's when our brains, I think, started stepping through where the story could go. And, in our minds, that's why the Avengers lost in Infinity War, is the fact that they were divided. They weren't functioning as a team in that movie any longer, and they weren't prepared for the universe's greatest threat.
He's a complicated character. He's a profoundly interesting villain who is equal parts empathetic and loathsome. He's also frightening and intimidating and nearly invincible, and he's driven, philosophically driven. I think a lot of people respect his monastic dedication to his task. He'll die for it, so he's an acolyte in that regard. And what's interesting about the end of that movie is that he shuns all materialism. He's got this amazingly powerful gauntlet that can alter the very fabric of the universe, and he retires to a shack on some desolate planet. He has no intentions of doing anything other than
serving the universe. Yeah. Our entire process was figuring that out. We knew we wanted to center the movie on the character, and we knew that we can only do that if we pulled off the most realistic feeling performance that you could possibly imagine in a movie. So we started very early on with our visual effects team, specifically our visual effects supervisor, Dan DeLue, and trying to figure out how the technology can work and we can actually achieve this. We did tests with Josh Brolin where he would come in, perform, and we would work on it for several months and try to figure out the best version of it. So yeah, that character was built methodically over the entire span of the development of the film. As storytellers, we find that one of the most empathetic moments in the story. And also the other thing is to focus on his choice. All of these characters make flawed choices. If Thor had not been so angry and so revenge-driven, he may have killed Thanos faster than he did.
He'd have gone for the head.
He would have gone for the head, exactly. The fact that he wanted revenge, he wanted to see in Thanos' eyes as he was killing him, that's gave Thanos a window to reverse things on him. So, it's all these characters have emotional vulnerabilities that complicate their ability to do what needs to be done. And it's us sort of watching them fight through that is part of the fun.
So it makes them interesting to watch if all they did was make the right choice every time. I don't, it's a fairly predictable and boring story after a while.
I think one thing Joe and I love about ensemble storytelling is you have so many different places to go in the story at any given moment. The point of view can shift from character to character. So we wanted to commit very fully to the idea that Thor was going to be the hero of the movie. Thor was going off on this very individual quest to find a way, after suffering this horrible opening scene defeat to Thanos, where Thanos kills his brother and Heimdall and wipes out many of his people. So he is on a journey through the entire film of revenge. So the audience is on that ride with Thor the whole way. And it's a difficult road for him, but he finds a way to figure it out.
He almost kills himself doing it.
Yeah, and so when he shows up in Wakanda, like, we have gone through all the storytelling beats to tell you Thor is going to do this. And that was, one of our great thrills of the movie was that not only him arriving, but then what happens once he does arrive.
Based on one of our childhood cinematic inspirations, there's a sequence at the end of Excalibur where Lancelot shows up in the battle. And I always remember how rousing that was when I would watch it as a kid. Your heroes are on the edge of defeat, and one of them, having gone through great pain, shows up to save them. It felt like the right moment.
The only devious thing for us, though, it was a fake out.
I mean, it was all story driven. It was who was where and which character dynamics we wanted to exploit. I think even at one point we had Thor going to Titan instead of Wakanda, and then made the decision that we wanted the climax to happen on Earth and not on Titan, so we moved Thor to Earth. And
we don't simply think about what do we want the teams to be at the end of the movie. A lot of us figuring that out is how do we get there? Those small little choices we make along the way that end up pushing somebody one place or the other ends up dictating where they
We knew we wanted Peter with Tony. We knew that we wanted Strange and Tony together because we wanted to see that two egotistical characters going at each other. We knew Cap was in hiding on Earth, so that was always going to stay that way. And pairing Cap with T'Challa was going to be a really, after that final scene in Civil War, to see those two characters reunite, we knew that would be a powerful moment. And where would you run to on Earth to be the most protected? Clearly Wakanda. So everything sort of logically starts to answer itself as you move through the story. I mean, RDJ was probably the only one to actually read the entire script. I think Benedict got the script that included his scenes only.
I mean,
Evans might have read
part of our
script.
motivation to do that is it just takes a lot of pressure off of people, because it is hard to constantly censor yourself about what you're saying, how you talk, because these movies are your whole life. It's everything you're doing all day long. Like, the inclination is to talk about it. So we take a lot of pressure off of people by just saying, okay, the less you know, the less you have to mind yourself.
Hemsworth's character, Thor doesn't need to know what Captain America's doing for most of Infinity War. So Hemsworth reads his scenes and Evans reads his scenes. And then if they don't read the rest of the movie, they don't know what's going on with it, and it makes it easier for them to have conversations with people.
You kept it going through.
Kept it going through, even more so in Endgame.
All right.
There's more secrets in Endgame than there are in Infinity War.
It is a more tedious way to work, to be honest with you, because we do have to do more discussion on set about context, because they don't have the entirety of the script to rely on. So you do have to work harder to work in this way, but we believe it's worth it, because the payoff is that special experience in the movie theater for all the audiences.
We grew up watching movies. There was a lot less context. You had to read things in the newspaper. Maybe you saw something on television. The only way you knew a movie was out was you flipped to the movie page and there was a big advertisement for it. And we loved that. I mean, it really profoundly affected us when we saw movies. We had so little context for the movies. We're emotionally driven to make sure that people get the same experience today in a culture where everyone wants to know things yesterday.
Is there fake footage throughout the trailers this time?
Maybe it's all fake.
Yeah.
Maybe there's not a real frame in that whole trailer.
I don't know. That's interesting. I mean, we
Yeah.
really haven't focused that much on what's coming next. We were focused so hard on delivering this movie. And we haven't had a lot of conversations with Kevin about where he's going. So we might be the wrong people to ask that question to.
Yeah, I think it's very creatively liberating to Joe and I, and almost like a creative discipline for us to not think about the future. Like, we really wanted to be focused on just telling the end of the story, and that's it.